Joining us today from Houston, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. And Senator, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. It's good to have you here.
Bill, good morning. Good to be with you.
I want to get to a number of topics. Let's start, however, on Ukraine. You just heard my conversation there with Admiral Kirby. Have we done all we can?
Not remotely. And tragically, Europe is on the verge of war because of the weakness, the fecklessness of Joe Biden. I heard a minute ago Admiral Kirby make reference to that the Biden administration, I think he said, quote, "We're still digesting what happened back in August." Joe Biden's surrender and disastrous retreat from Afghanistan is the worst military catastrophe for the United States in decades. And the consequences, at the time, I said, as a result of this incredible weakness, all of our enemies across the globe are looking to Washington. They are taking the measure of the man in the Oval Office. And as a result, as I said back in August, the chances of Russia invading Ukraine have just risen tenfold. The chances of China invading Taiwan have just risen tenfold. We're seeing the first of those two shoes dropping today because of Biden's weakness. But, Bill, it's even worse than that. We had in place bipartisan policies to prevent what is happening right now. Specifically, in 2019, I introduced legislation, targeted sanctions directed at the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Nord Stream 2 is the pipeline that Putin is building from Russia to Germany. The reason he's building the pipeline is that it skips Ukraine. It goes right around Ukraine. Why? Because the real insurance that Ukraine had against invasion is that Putin has to take his energy, his natural gas, in pipelines that go through Ukraine. Once he builds Nord Stream 2, he no longer has to worry about those pipelines. In 2019, I authored sanctions, bipartisan sanctions in Congress. They passed with overwhelming bipartisan majorities. President Trump signed my sanctions legislation into law, and Putin stopped building the pipeline the day President Trump signed those sanctions. That pipeline was dead for over a year until Joe Biden became president, and Putin began building that pipeline again on January 24th, 2021, 4 days after Biden was sworn into office. Why? Because he knew what was going to happen, which was that Joe Biden formally waived sanctions on Russia, on Putin, and gave the green light to build Nord Stream 2. That is why we have over 100,000 troops and Russian tanks on the border of Ukraine preparing to invade. That's why we're on the brink of war in Europe.
But now in 2022, this Congress can't even agree on sanctions. And it is true the president could go ahead with some sanctions as well on his own. But that to the side, the White House has been very aggressive in calling out Russian tactics. And they've done it very publicly by the day, I would argue. Would you concede that's worked so far?
No, it hasn't worked at all. If you look at what the Ukrainians want, they've been very explicit. They've said two things. They've said, number one, if you want to stop a Russian invasion, they've asked the United States explicitly, put sanctions on Nord Stream 2 right now today. Joe Biden could do that this morning. He refuses to do it. And they said, number two, provide lethal military aid. Give us the weapons to defend ourselves. And I finally, last month, I forced a vote in the United States Senate on sanctions on Nord Stream 2. Every single Democrat in the Senate had voted for my sanctions legislation twice previously. But the difference was last time you had a president with an R behind his name. Now you got a president with a D behind his name. When we voted, I won a bipartisan majority, a big bipartisan majority, 55 to 44. But the Democrats filibustered the bill. They demanded 60 votes. Ironically, while at the same time they were calling the filibuster a Jim Crow racist relic from the past, that same day they were filibustering to protect Russia and Putin, and 44 Democrats gave in to political pressure from the Biden White House. They voted in favor of Russia, against sanctions. And explicitly, the president of Poland, the prime minister of Poland, the president of Ukraine, the prime minister of Ukraine, the president of the Ukrainian parliament, all explicitly said, if you want to stop this invasion, sanction Nord Stream 2. Joe Biden came to Capitol Hill and personally lobbied Democratic senators to vote against Russian sanctions. That's why we're facing this invasion. I got to say, Bill.
Yes.
Joe Biden becoming president is the best thing that ever happened, tragically, for Vladimir Putin.